A couple years ago, I used to attend a boarding school in Singapore. This was for the last 2 years of high school, or junior college as we called it. I'm a Catholic, and since none of my friends in the boarding school were practicing Catholics, I attended Sunday Mass on my own every week. If you've been to Singapore, you know it's one of the best countries to go around on your own. It's sometimes even more fun than going around with other people. So this wasn't something that bothered me too much. This Sunday in question came before a long week of submissions and tests, so I was already stressed to begin with. On top of that, I had also somehow managed to oversleep. I liked attending the 8 a.m. Mass. It's the one with the best choir. So I had to splurge on a cab instead of taking the bus like I usually do. I only got a limited amount of money for the month from my parents, and I spent most of it on food. So by the time I had walked into church, I was upset and just looking for some peace. I guess the stress made me look frazzled and upset, which might have been what caught his attention. As I was late for Mass, I had to stand at the back of the church with the other latecomers, as there were no open seats left for us. This man was standing a few feet to my right. He was wearing spectacles and an eternal frown. He was Chinese, like almost everyone else in the church. I noticed him scowling at me throughout the Mass, but I ignored him on purpose because I didn't want to get upset unnecessarily. I was the only Indian in my boarding school, so I was used to receiving weird looks. It didn't help that the area in which my school and also this church were located was a pretty rich neighborhood, and I had never seen an obviously non-Chinese person in the church. So the too long don't read is I was used to be a stared at minority. I refused to pay this guy any attention though. What happened next took place during a lull in the Mass, during the distribution of communion. Many people tend to move out of the church after receiving communion, so a seat opened up near where I and the man were standing. I moved towards the tent after making sure there were no elderly around me who would like the seat. I sat there. The man maneuvered himself so that he was now standing behind me. This was when I began to feel unsafe. And then he began talking. His words were not directly towards anyone in particular. He seemed to be there on his own. The silence in the church only served to amplify what he was saying. Only in our section though, he wasn't speaking that loud. Basically, apropos of nothing, this random guy began railing about how the Indians were destroying his beautiful country. He went on about how they were doing horrible things to themselves on the streets of Geylang, staking up their schools and hospitals, and making Singapore into a jungle. How the government needed to throw all of them out. He said a bunch of other things that I don't remember now. He also repeated a lot of the stuff, which is why it got stuck in my head. He must have said stuff like that 5 times, and maybe even switched it out for other horrible things. It was obvious that his words were meant for me. I turned around to look at him when he first began with a kind of, "Are you kidding me" face. He was staring at me, his face the stock image of hatred and rage. The people around him were shifting uncomfortably. I turned back around, shut my eyes, and willed him quiet. He didn't shut up. At some point, I began quietly crying. I wanted so badly to move away, to run out of the church, but I was scared of causing a scene and making people notice me in a way that I didn't want to be noticed. I could not fully explain the absurdity of the situation. We were in a church. In some other section, the priest was still distributing communion to the congregation. The rest of the church sat in prayerful silence. And in the back, in this one corner, this random guy was spewing hate directed at a 17-year-old. And nobody said a word to shut him up. When the priest returned to the altar and had us rise for the final blessing, I took that opportunity to get out of my pew and move away from the man. But to my horror, he followed. The Mass had ended by then, and people were moving towards the exit, as was I. but he followed behind me, raised his voice, asked me where I was going. That was when a lady in the vicinity said something like, "Don't say that to her, don't use those words." But when I looked to her, thinking that she would help me get away from this guy, she refused to meet my eye and moved away. We got out of the church, and I couldn't see the guy anymore, so I ran blindly towards the exit and in the direction of the bus stop. I couldn't think straight, didn't know what I looked like. I had no clue what was happening. I got to the bus stop and decided to get onto the first bus that pulled up, even if it was going the wrong way. I thought that I was safe, and I got my phone out of my purse. And then I turned around and, like a horror movie, he was there walking towards me. The only other people at the bus stop were a woman and a kid. I didn't feel confident enough to approach them and ask for help, so, fingers shaking, I locked my phone and called my roommate. She answered the phone groggily. I had probably woken her up, and without waiting for her to say anything, I told her very loudly that a strange man had followed me from the church to the bus stop, and he had been verbally abusing me, and I didn't feel safe. The man who had been advancing towards me all this time went and stood with the woman and the child, who had also heard me and moved away from him. The bus pulled up, I got in, the doors closed, and we pulled away. In that moment, I was so overwhelmed by what had happened that I stood at the entrance of the bus, next to the bus driver, and just burst out crying. I don't remember what was going through my head. My heart was going crazy in my chest. I must have been having the worst panic attack. The bus driver and everyone else in the bus was staring at me like I was crazy probably. At the next stop, the driver asked me if I was okay, and when I couldn't respond, asked me where I needed to go. I gave him the name of my school. A passenger who had just gotten into the bus took me back out, explained to me which bus I would need to take, and asked someone also waiting at the bus stop to make sure that I caught the right bus. Somehow, I got back to the boarding school. I had left my roommate on call, and it had made her extremely worried. By the time I got back to my room, she had notified our mentor and had placed a call to the church to ask if I was still there and if they could find me. They obviously didn't know anything. So, I guess that's my story. I just want to clarify that besides this one experience, I have never felt unsafe in Singapore. And I'm not in any way trying to post that all Singaporeans are bad towards Indians. This did shake me thoroughly though, and I could not bring myself to go back to the church for a long time. I truly hope I, or anyone else for that matter, are never placed in a similar situation ever again. For background, my family moved to the countryside from the city when I was about 7 years old, and I'm 21 now. Both my parents had grown up in the suburbs and had lived in the capital of our state for about 10 years before we had moved. It definitely took us some time to get used to the train tracks that ran by our house, the wild animals, the weird but kind neighbors, and the odd visitors. Another thing is that you have to get off the main road and turn onto a long gravel drive to get up to our house. We can see the entire length of the driveway from certain points in our yard, which is about 3 acres. A few years after we had moved in, my dad got a promotion at work, and as a result, started to go to conferences and business trips that lasted from a few days to a week, at least a couple of times a year. My mom felt nervous about being home alone with 2 young kids. I was 10 and my brother was 6, and so we decided to get a dog. We knew that we wanted a big dog, but something that would be gentle with my brother and I. After a few weeks looking at shelters, we took home Rocky. He was about 9 months when we took him home, and already pushing 70 pounds. We believe that he was a German Shepherd mix with some northern or mountain breed. We aren't sure to this day, but he's a massive red-colored dog with a long black muzzle and ears, a fluffy tail that he carries over his back, and a white stripe up his nose. It wasn't long until he was 100 pounds, and an absolute force to be reckoned with. Even though he was very gentle with both my sister and I, loved our cats and was a big ball of joy around everyone we brought into our house, he tended to be very territorial and aggressive with other dogs, and very protective of us, especially of my mom and I. Once the electric company came to do work on the telephone poles on our property without telling us at first, and after 20 minutes they finally had to call us because Rocky had trapped them in their truck and was jumping up and barking at their windows. I doubt he would have really attacked them if they had gotten out of their trucks, but it was more than enough to make them think twice. This protective instinct came in very, very handy one day. It was summertime and my dad was at work and my mom was home with my brother and I, since she was a teacher and off for the summer with us. My mom was working in our garden, and my brother and I were playing close by, with Rocky watching over all of us. Rocky all of a sudden sounded the alarm, throwing his head up in the air and barking and howling. He makes a deep woo-woo noise. I looked up to see a dirty white pickup truck pull off from the main road and into our driveway. This wasn't necessarily alarming at first, as people sometimes used our driveway to turn around when they got lost. But the white pickup slowly ambled up our drive, and I could see something strange in the bed. It was lumpy and discolored, but I couldn't really tell what it was until he pulled all the way up to our house, where our other cars were, and honked the horn to get our attention. It was meat. Giant red chunks of meat with some of the limbs of various animals still attached. It was the creepiest thing that I had ever seen in my life. Just a grizzled, scraggly man in his early 50s, driving a pickup truck full of meat in the southern July heat. I immediately just got a really, really bad vibe from this guy, and I remember my mom telling my brother and I to go inside, and we did, but we watched out the glass door. Rocky had surprisingly been quiet at that point, but was now next to my mom, and she had her hand around his collar. The guy rolled down his window and asked my mom if she wanted to purchase some meat. My mom said no and to please leave our property. Instead, he went on about the different types of meat, and asking how much we wanted. Beef, venison, pork, etc. My mom asked him to leave again, but instead he decided to get out of the nasty white pickup. As soon as his feet were on the ground, Rocky went ballistic, barking and snarling. This finally made the guy stop. He looked at Rocky, looked at my mom, and then asked, "Does your dog bite?" And my mom, deathly serious, replied, "Only if I tell him to." The guy took one more look at Rocky and I'm guessing decided not to mess with the giant, snarling beast. He got back in his truck, backed up, and headed back down our driveway. I don't know if he really was selling the meat or not, but apparently he had been around to our neighbors as well, who had also gotten a really bad vibe from him. We'll never know what he was really up to with those giant slabs of meat in the bed of his pickup truck. Maybe he was just a weird guy trying to sell some sketchy meat. Maybe he was looking for something else. We never saw the meat man, as we started to call him, again though. To this day, Rocky is still kicking it, by the way. He's almost 15 and now he's completely deaf. But he's still out in the yard on summer days, watching over us. About 2 years ago, I moved into a new apartment. The walls were very thin, and because of the fire safety laws in my city, my bedroom had one window which led into the living room, and none with outside access. The window will be important later. It was 3 bedrooms, one for me, one for the master tenant, and one spare, which at the time was rented out by a pretty friendly guy. Well, the friendly guy had issues with his work visa and had to move back to Canada last minute, leaving us about 2 weeks to find another roommate. Our quickest and easiest option was Craigslist. Due to my work schedule, I had no part in the selection process, but I was content when the new roommate moved in a little later. He seemed a bit off but friendly. He was a very tall, large guy but pretty quiet, and not someone I wanted to go out of my way to hang out with, but I was okay to be around and be cordial with. About 2 weeks into his move-in, the master tenant left for Hawaii, leaving him and I alone in the home for a month-long duration of his stay. For the first few days, things are pretty normal. All of a sudden, about 4 days into the trip, I am woken up about 8 a.m. to a frantic knocking at my door. My roommate, we'll call him Kyle, is standing there when I open up, looking frazzled. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "So, do you want to tell me what went on last night?" To which I was shocked and confused because I had come home from work at about 9 p.m. and immediately showered and went to bed. I explained this to him and he tells me that he heard me screaming and arguing with someone in my room, that he saw me in the side alley out the window, arguing with our landlord, whom I had never even seen at that point, that he heard people coming in and out of our house. I tell him no way, none of that ever happened. After staring at me for a little longer, he leaves and he doesn't bring it up again. The next morning, I wake up to the same thing. This time, he says that he saw me arguing with my boyfriend. I was single at the time. Had seen me talking with our other roommate, who's in Hawaii, and asking me for the badge number of the officer that I had spoken to, since he had apparently seen me talking to a bunch of police as well. This time, I get angry and more or less tell him to cut this crap out, because I'm not doing anything and I don't know what he's talking about. He gets a weird look on his face and says, "I think I had a seizure in my sleep. The next time it happens, call an ambulance." And he leaves for a bit, only to start knocking again about an hour later, and when I open up, Kyle repeats the exact same story verbatim. This happens once more before I tell him to leave me the heck alone and leave for work. I go to work as normal and I am reluctant to return that night, but I'm too tired to switch to an alternate location. Big mistake. About 1 a.m., I wake up to slamming doors. Kyle is pacing back and forth between his bedroom, the living room, and out the front door, walking in and out of each room, turning the lights on and off, mumbling angrily and slamming the doors. I can see his figure pacing back and forth through the frosted window in my room that leads to the living room. Since my room is dark, he can't see inside. Suddenly, he screams, "I can't live like this. Why are you doing this to me?" I think he's on the phone and I don't respond. A few moments later, he screams my name repeatedly and I realize that he's directing it towards me. I knew I had to get the heck out of there. So I very quietly creep out of bed and start getting dressed and packing a bag of clothes for work in the morning. I'm almost done when he screams, "I hear you," and charges over to my room, slapping the wall next to my door and not touching the door itself. I look toward my window and I see his shadow lean all the way forward, pressing his ear up against the glass. I was terrified and sat completely still, unmoving. He eventually screams my name again and moves away from the window, and I hear him start pacing between rooms again. Now, my shoes are kept on a rack outside of my door, and not inside of my room, so I know that when I'm going to leave, I'm going to need to take a moment to put them on. I decide to wait until his pacing takes him out the front door again, at which time I plan to grab my shoes, put them on, and run. As I'm formulating this plan, the pacing stops. He screams, Do you want to fight about this? Come out right now and we'll fight, I swear to God. Now, I'm a very small 5-foot girl and this guy is easily 3 times my size. So I'm definitely not looking for a fight, thanks but no thanks. After a few minutes, he turns off all the lights and I hear the door to his room open and close, followed by silence. I wait for a moment to be sure that I can't hear any movement, and then I decide to take my chance. I took a deep breath and pulled my door open quietly. I step out and grab my shoes before I look up a second later, and I see him standing shirtless with just a pair of boxers and socks on in the dark of the hallway. His arms hung slightly outward in an awkward position. He says in a low, calm voice, "Ma'am, we need to talk." That was a hard no for me, so I grab my shoes and run out the door with them in hand. I run about a half block barefoot before I stop and put them on. When I look back, he's standing in the porch lights of a front door, watching me run but not moving. Luckily, I had a friend who lived 2 blocks away and I had their spare key, so I let myself in and I crashed there for the night. And that's where I stayed for the next week or so while we worked things out with the master tenant, and Kyle agreed to move out within the week. He said that he doesn't remember anything that happened, or wasn't sure if it was real or not. But if I said that's what went down, then it must be real. The day Kyle left, he sent me a photo of the house key sitting on the table and says, "I'm out, nothing else." I take a friend over there with me to scout it out and ensure that he actually left. And when we get there, we discover that not only had he left a ton of food and furniture, but he had ripped all the fire alarms out of the ceilings. He had unscrewed and removed the deadbolt to the front door, and left them lined up neatly on the front table. We then realized that my front door could only lock by using a key from the outside, and that it had been locked when we had arrived, meaning Kyle still had a key. We called a locksmith immediately. Even after changing the locks, I was still terrified to stay there alone afterwards, and never went to sleep at night without barricading the doors with chairs and other furniture. To this day, I still fear for his safety. He was obviously psychologically unstable, but I also wonder what could have happened if I hadn't been as lucky as I was.